Hey, everybody. Sorry about that. Get started here in a moment. If anyone has any items they would like to discuss today, the agenda is always open for suggestions. And if there are no other suggestions, I only have one item to mention today. So this could be a very short meeting.
Not so fast, buddy. But go ahead, just get started.
Yeah, so please, is anyone interested in helping us take notes today? Since Arnaud has some stuff to talk about. Well, I guess we'll all do our best to take notes. Notes are one of the most important artifacts this group creates because other people like to listen and look and they can't make the call. Do we have anyone that is a first time or new attendee that wanted to introduce themselves and say hello?
Who's this guy, Jay White? Never seen him before.
Never seen Jay White. He's new.
Surprise, people. Surprise.
I'll go. I'm Josh Clements. I'm new. Serial lurker this week. I have no idea what I'm doing. I came across the OpenSSF day at the last open source summit, and my company's like, yeah, go do that some more. I'm like, sweet. So here I am.
So
yeah,
well,
I work in the OSPO, so I am at least tangentially related to open source stuff. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to learn more about everything that's going on, and you guys are doing some great work. So
welcome.
Thanks.
Well, I too don't know what I'm doing, but I guess we'll all kind of stumble through it together.
Fun.
All right. Before Arnaud has his pile of items for us to talk about, I'd like to mention that the project formerly known as the Sterling Toolchain officially kicked off the inaugural weekly meetings. They will be held Tuesdays at noon Eastern time. And like everything, those calls are recorded. Their notes are cataloged. Actually, we had a really great note taker. So the notes from Tuesday were quite extensive. So if you're curious to see how the Sterling toolchain develops, please participate there. And I'm going to have a proposal that we might leverage this group's Git repository to stage artifacts, since it is kind of related to the great unifying theory of how the foundation works. Any questions about that? All right. Well, what do we want to talk about today aside from that?
Yeah, so let me jump in. So, as you know, we received some very interesting feedback from the maintainer of the Drupal community.
Mhm.
And, I thought for those who haven't seen it, this was posted as an issue on the TAC repo. And basically we had a maintainer say, hey guys, sorry to tell you, and this was done in a very polite way and, very respectful and well-wishing, well-intended, clearly, to say, look, I think you're missing out on your mission in the sense that most of the communication is essentially oriented towards members or potential members, meaning corporations, and part of your mission is really to try to change the community of open source developers and maintainers in particular. And you're missing that target. Basically, the message is very clear, and it was, other people not always so politely said, yes, what she said. and you know, basically you're missing the target to the point where we as maintainers, we just don't care about what you guys are doing. And so I think, you know, as a tech member and a caring person, as a part of the community, OpenSSF, you know, I feel like I have to take this very seriously. And I think it's very helpful feedback. And there were several points that were actually also made, suggestions on how to improve, address some of the shortcomings, right? Which I'm very grateful for, because it wasn't just criticism, it was actually really trying to be helpful. But you know, right away I thought about this group because we've talked about different ways to represent this organization, all the things that are happening. And we did talk about the fact that there wasn't possibly one universal view of things, because there were different targets, different persona we could address. And clearly, this is one important persona that I would say, based on that feedback, we appear to fail addressing. And so right away, I thought, okay, we need to have a strong look here. We talked about, you know, we have a whole collection of diagrams. A lot of them we have to thank Crow for, because he seemed to have like a bubbling mind to just come. He keeps coming up with new ideas on how to represent this stuff. But at the same time, like, yeah, the one that we seem to have mostly settled on, at least, you know, it's part of the deck. It's basically the governance structure based one, which they tell us clearly this might be useful for corporate member, but for developer out there is trying to say, hey, what should I learn from OpenSSF? What should I care about? This is completely unhelpful. And so my takeaway is, okay, specific to this group was, okay, is there one diagram that we should focus on? Is there one that's among all the collection we already have that's close enough? Or is there something else we need to develop? So that's the one point I wanted to bring up today, which I think is worth spending a bit of time on.
I think that's an excellent point. I was also similarly moved by, I believe her handle is WebChick. She thought I had a very well put together issue. And it was also incredibly nice that she put forth the effort to give us some suggested solutions. Jennifer and I had talked not about the issue, but a little bit about the idea of we need to start taking some action on some of our diagrams yesterday. We met with some of the creative folks from LF about geese pictures, but then we kind of moved into how can we potentially modify the website to be more inviting and kind of focus in on Omkar's parlance's use cases. I prefer personas, but that'll be a wonderful potato debate between he and I once we get a chance to chat. And I'll point you to, we had a suggestion pretty early on about a way to present the foundation was kind of looking at personas and kind of looking at the user journey that persona might go through as they would engage with the foundation. So there's a persona view, and we didn't develop it very far, but the high level was, we would take a look at what these use cases or developers are, and then present some type of view and talk about common tasks or common needs of that constituent, and then directly route them to, if I'm a developer and I want to learn how to write more secure code, I'll get dumped right into the best working group that has the guides and training and all kinds of fun stuff. Or if I want to know about how to scan my code, we might get bounced over to the tooling working group, for example. And again, this was a real fast and dirty attempt at just showing a possibility. And if this group likes that, and if that's just kind of the thinking of how we might want to present the foundation, we definitely could take that user journey persona viewpoint as we think about retooling some of the web artifacts like our Git repo and then the web page. There's potential ways you could put 4 questions up, who are you? What do you want to know? I'm a developer. Well, click, and then you could graphically kind of dive into and route the person to base off what their task they're trying to achieve. So does this, like, from your perspective here, bringing this up, Arnaud, does this kind of idea, while it might not be pretty, does this kind of
No, but I'm
sink a
looking at
little
it and I agree. I think this is indeed the kind of stuff that's probably closer to what they are looking for, that would be better fitted to address this need that is being expressed, right? And I agree, we haven't really developed this further, but maybe this is worth spending time on.
Might also help
Other
us
folks,
out
go ahead, Jay.
later on with the Sterling tool chain too, or whatever we end up calling it. To personas in this fashion, we just keep that gravy train rolling. Ask the question of this person wants to use these tools or get this level of understanding, and we stay true to people, process, and technology. That should comprise what the tool chain becomes. Then it would be, oh, we want this information to go to these people who will give you this process, who should have access to this technology. I don't know. Something like that. Either way, it works. Not just for this particular use case, but for other use cases as well.
Mm-hmm. And I posted a real quick diagram before I go to Jen of the current idea that the Sterling toolchain folks are chewing on, of a way to think about that proposal and kind of breaking it up into capabilities and patterns and ultimately personas that need to be addressed. So I love this type of work. Jennifer.
So to start, we have on the homepage now, if you go, there's sort of 3 buttons that I think is a prime real estate that we could potentially identify 3 or 4 primary personas, and then kind of lead them on a journey for either how to get involved, or what tools might be helpful for them in their everyday lives professionally, and just kind of make that one of the main focuses. It's just a matter of building that out and making sure that we put the right information in there, and then we can work with the design team to build it graphically, make it look good, and then we can work with the web team to make it interactive and make sure people get where they're going. So I love the idea. I think it's really great, and it's really just a matter of getting started and kind of picking a direction to go, right?
So not holding your feet to the fire for a specific date, but if we decided we wanted to take up this work and we actually had our shit together and we were organized and we had kind of a flow,
That's a lot of ifs already, but go ahead.
I know. But approximately how long from we're done until we could get it to the web might that be?
I mean, it really depends on the time of year. I'll say, like, around Open Source Summit, the design team gets slammed. So if we'd be looking before then, we'd want to get that done, ASAP. So it can really depend. It might be something like 4 weeks. It might be something closer to 12 weeks. It can really depend, right?
Sure.
And it depends on how complex it is that we want it to be. So I don't feel comfortable giving a more specific answer than that.
I'm not going to hold you to it. I'm just curious, just generally.
Yeah.
Having never done this with, I could say at Intel, it would be like 1 month to 5 years to get the web page modified.
Okay, I'll commit to less than 5 years. How about that?
We're super agile.
How courageous.
But I will say it's not going to be immediate. So do bake in a little bit of time. Yeah, there's a lot of variables.
Would we like to potentially unveil this as part of EU or Japan OpenSSF Day potentially?
Yeah, I'd love to tie it to an event. Kind of a grand reveal.
terrible.
I'm torn about it, to be honest. I mean, if we did something like this, we should have it out as soon as possible because it would be addressing a real need. I wouldn't want to hold off because we want to have a big announcement tied to an event. But if it kind of coincides, sure, why not?
Well, and some contributing factors that complicate this is there are several groups within the foundation today that have personas. There is no
So different, you mean?
yeah, there's no centralization around that. So I have Jay and I and a couple folks have been poking at a proposal to restructure things within the foundation. And one of the ideas was creating kind of an architecture. The name will need to be determined, but an architecture working group. And underneath that would be like personas. There would be a group that focuses in on centralizing the personas around taxonomy, because we have a couple different dictionaries floating around that conflict a little bit. And it would be great if we just had a common dictionary we all used when we were talking about the OpenSSF. And then I would propose that this group kind of gets aligned to that effort. But I have a couple personas we could look at immediately, but I know that there's at least one or two other groups that have personas, and that we would need to refine. When we talk about the developer, are we just focused on a new developer? Are we focused on somebody mid-career or senior, a maintainer? So we have to kind of do some refinement around once we agree upon a word, and then develop that journey for that person. I can show you a for example.
When you look at this, I mean, look for this. I wanted to point out, talking about having a reference architecture group kind of thing. You know that the calendar invite for this group we are on now still refers to this name, reference
Yes.
architecture.
I know.
So
because I changed the name to
I know.
avoid arguments.
But the calendar didn't keep up.
I think I know somebody that could help us with that. Yeah, so here's a real simple so as a for example, this is some work on personas that has existed for a very long time within the foundation. And this is focused in from a vulnerability disclosure perspective. But we could easily, if we like this to start, we could very easily adjust and make it a little more universal, and kind of account for like the micro persona per se, if there's a nuance between two different types of maintainers, for example. But that's what I agree, Jim. We probably want to get consensus on what the most important personas would be, to put that on the front page of the foundation, and then map out kind of what talk through like what those persona journeys would be. And like for this, I don't account for OpenSSF member or other open source foundation, that type of stuff. So we're missing a couple of things like that. But then again, this is tailored towards CVD.
And I think if we wanted to build out like additional personas like that aren't featured on the homepage, we can make sure they're addressed elsewhere. So it's not like
right.
that would be a wasted effort.
Hey, you don't see yourself? Click on this button. We have a bigger list. So would we like to start the effort of hashing out a handful of personas we think that the foundation would we are serving? or interact with? I got a thumbs up.
I think that would be useful.
All right. Well, let us my computer is just dragging. Too many
Wondering
tabs.
whether there's an overlap with the effort to try to build a glossary. There may be an overlap there. I wonder, we heard of was it the end user working group that was working on a glossary for OpenSSF?
They have one. They have a taxonomy for attacks,
A
and then
taxonomy,
like
okay.
the best working group has a dictionary, and I think the supply chain people have a taxonomy or lexicon.
Okay, but that's the problem statement. I thought there was an effort to try to reconcile those.
I had filed an issue with the TAC eons ago suggesting it, and no
Okay,
enthusiastic volunteer picked up that work, and I don't have any more time to give this place.
no, I understand that. Okay, but so that's the status. I was wondering if it.
Yes, status is 0. But that is something I would like to talk to Omkar about next week, is kind of proposing this architecture group, and then actually see if we can entice people to start to take up some of these work efforts.
Because am I wrong, or I mean, those persona, they would fit in that, right? I mean, what's the right? You would talk about the maintainer, finder, all these things should be
Mhm.
there as well. Because so to build a kind of like the OpenSSF list of persona, that
Mhm.
means we have to go on a fishing expedition first, right?
Well, I think we could probably start here and get a okay-ish list, and then we can do the homework to go on that fishing expedition.
And say, hey, we built this. Tell us, what you think? Are we missing anything? Is there anything shocking to you that you can't live with?
Well, and I guess a question to Amanda and Jen. I know we have the general Slack channel. Do we have any kind of amalgam to like a mailing list that I could send an email to the membership? Because not everybody can use Slack or monitor Slack, especially the general channel.
I agree. It would be useful to send an email to, like, if we want to send to every project or every working group.
What I have done with that is send it to the working group leads and then have them send it out to the sub lists. We do have a main mailing list, but we don't generally use that one because it's too big.
I don't want to annoy people. Yeah.
And I think, and there's also some subscription issues with it too. So like we use it, people unsubscribe, then now they're not subscribed to important things.
It's a one-shot gun, thing. Once you trigger, it's not worth anything anymore. Okay.
So let's bounce around a
Going to
couple
the working
ideas.
group leads is probably a good first step.
Yeah, I will send a note to the working group leads and see. My historic experience engaging with that particular constituency has been hit or miss, but maybe they're more engaged now. But so if we were thinking about personas that the foundation serves or interacts with, who do we think those types of people are? Do we want to distinguish between developer or maintainer? Are those unique enough jobs that we should have 2 personas, or have one big persona with maybe little baby personas underneath?
Yeah, and this is where it becomes challenging because developers, you have consumer, for instance,
Mhm.
you developer, depending on which side you sit in, you're a provider of like some general library, or if you're on the consumer side, just consuming and developing some application. We have to.
Would we be brave enough to start with just developer, and then maybe note there are a couple different nuanced permutations of that?
I
Or
would
do we
have said the opposite because I think developer is too broad and too many people are going to say, raise their hand, I'm a developer, and yet they're completely different. And so they don't fit in the same bucket and they don't, the things we're talking about at OpenSSF, what kind of material group, etc., is relevant to them is based on something finer grained than developer or not.
And I would be afraid to just land on maintainer, because in a project in the contribution ladder, the maintainers, there are fewer maintainers than there are potentially contributors.
I think we can make an argument that there's a difference between developers and the, I'd have both. And then you just gotta define them very, very well. And then people will be able to make a better educated decision on which one that they fall into. I think the unique part about, I say this, and at the same time, I can already see the issue fly. The unique part about this is we can define what a maintainer is and a developer is for the OpenSSF. That's controversial. I know I said it. I can already see the issue written. I can already see it. We're ready for that one. But in truth, we can do that, and we just have to get those two definitions tight, nice and tight. Because I agree, I don't think it's not easy to say that a developer, a maintainer doesn't have to be a developer, but every developer is a maintainer. No, that's not the case. If you can't say that, it's not. If you can't make the and, it's an or. That way, then that means you have to define both. Right. So both personas are by themselves.
Would it be unpopular to do something like having maintainer / open source project, or is that kind of too much together?
And that's what with the CVD persona, we kind of lumped together maintainer as that was the actual, capital M maintainer, or project contributor or community member, just kind of balled that all up for all intents and purposes.
And there is not every contributor is not a maintainer.
Right.
And so you have that issue too.
Yep.
But that ball just trickles, that just keeps rolling down there.
Yeah, but I think this is Krupp's point is the question is whether that difference matters or not for a purpose.
Yep. Is there something unique enough they need their own flow?
Or can they be treated the same from that point of view?
I think it'll matter to enough people where we'll only end up doing it anyway. Should just do it in the beginning. That way you can let them fight over the exact definition. Let's not fight over whether it's there at all at the 11th hour, right? The people only end up wanting to see what they want to see anyway, whatever makes them feel good. I'd rather have the argument for than against and only end up doing it anyway just to appease. Easy.
Do we think of any other permutations around just generic developer? I have a project contributor, a developer consumer, and then a maintainer. Are there any other styles of developer we may need to account for? And this is where we need to do the analysis. There is a cost to maintaining a large number of personas, so we need to balance out the cost versus the benefit that people get for having that specific unique thing.
Yeah, I agree. From the website point of view, for sure, we don't want to have this list blown up to so many categories because it becomes unmanageable, and even for people to find their way through it, it becomes too much of a pain. So I agree, we need to try to reduce it so that it's relevant enough, but not go crazy on the number of persona we end up with.
I will also say that in doing that, got to make sure that you got to look at what we're impacting, what the implication of that is. The stuff that's already been developed, guides,
Yep.
frameworks, etc. What have we been using across the OpenSSF that conflicts one way or the other? What one persona is in one working group in one SIG ain't one persona in one SIG ain't necessarily the persona used in the working group that SIG belongs under. I mean, we have to sit there and boost that up. We're going to do that. If we're going to shorten the shot, we're going to have to do that kind of.
So aside from developer maintainers, that's a community we serve and interact with. What other communities do we think would be important enough to have this kind of journey on the web page? Consumer,
Researcher, practitioner.
and having gone through that bike shed years ago with First and Miter and everyone, the security industry has agreed upon the term finder to represent any kind of researcher, hacker, anyone that discovers a vulnerability and reports it. That's just that got Art Mannion and I we were involved in so many arguments over that. Not he and I arguing, but just people arguing around us about that.
Once again, things that we're going to only end up fighting about later on.
Yeah.
But if you say finder, I promise you, I could think of one person that we know fondly that's not going to call himself a finder, and that's Jonathan.
Yep.
Jonathan's not going to say finder. Jonathan's going to always say researcher. He loves the term researcher. He's never going to use finder. So I just, oh God, this is going to get fun.
Yeah, but I don't know that this, I mean, you might be right on that, but I don't know that it would be offended if we said, well, if you go to the website, you see Finder, would you relate to this enough to click on that or not?
I helped write the CERT guide, and it's still, even amongst vendors, a little contentious.
I mean, vendor, the persona vendor.
Yep.
I could do this all day and with a laugh too, because it's funny as hell.
Well, and vendor, in the CVD world, we had supplier, because think about something like the Fedora team for Red Hat. They don't have a product. They aren't a vendor themselves. It's community driven, but they do supply a unique set of functionality. Whereas Red Hat is the vendor, but they both are kind of suppliers.
But
Whom else would we put things like OpenSSF members as a persona we serve?
if it wasn't difficult, there wouldn't be a problem. Okay. It would have been solved already by everybody else. So, I have to look at it positively. It's like, yeah, this is why it's tough. That's why it's not been done.
Would you extrapolate that maybe to OSPOs? Is that a unique enough identity? Or would that fall under the consumer?
Interesting idea.
Yeah, that's an odd one. That's a hard one.
If it was easy, you'd already fixed.
Maybe in other.
Well, I'm saying that because hospitals, in traditional hospitals, are supposed to manage both, uh, you call it, inbound and outbound. So there's inbound and outbound. And you seldomly hear those terms anymore, but inbound and outbound hospitals are managing those. So, I mean, consumers, but also, users.
Yeah.
I said,
I
John,
think the
John,
topic is so popular. I think we probably need to have OSPO by itself. I think that'll be one of the ones we land on for the front page. But that I agree. That's a blending of they have different. They combine that focus of internal consumption, but also external production.
Is this the Diagram Society meeting, or is this one of the working groups or the SIGs under the worst? This Diagrammer
This
Society.
is the Diagrammer Society, baby.
It's
Can we
not
read?
clear from the description of the meeting. It says OpenSSF referenced architecture diagram.
You missed the first episode.
Yeah, you have to go back and watch the video. We solved that, Jonathan.
We
Oh,
just
have you?
talked
'Cause
about
it's
that.
still not fixed on my case.
But
So
you're
clearly it's
right.
not solved.
It is not, but we just discussed it. It's funny. And we were talking about you, as a matter of fact.
I have 2 diagrams if you wanted to review them.
Maybe. Hold on. I will email ops.
gotta add it to the agenda, Jonathan. Come on, man.
Oh god, that means I have to open up a
But-
Google Doc. How dare you?
Get you no, but seriously, do you get offended if we call you a finder rather than a researcher?
So I found the meeting notes and it's a link to another meeting notes doc. So I just have to open that meeting notes doc to it's the one, and also that link is the one that's linked to in the
I'm gonna fix it.
We know,
Wait, wait.
Jonathan, we have acknowledged the issue.
Wait,
In my free
Jonathan,
time, I'll go through and fix it all.
Jonathan, there's a question on the floor for you. We're all
call me a hacker. Just to really, I really like the non-answer. No, I mean, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'm a security researcher. It's a title of import. It's like, you know, it's something that I'm very proud of that I've managed to achieve the
Well, there you
title
go.
of security researcher in my career.
Jonathan,
All right.
thank you very much. I stayed quiet on
You
this one.
made Jay
Not coach.
right. Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
I did not coach her.
Jay
anything.
was right.
I want to show for
Leading
the
the witness, sir.
I mean,
I
I
have
also
nothing to do with this answer.
I
I'm
also
looking-
feel like I can't claim the title hacker because I don't have enough of the hacker ethos. But I do have a history of pushing things and seeing how they break just for curiosity's sake, and that has gotten me into trouble, as evidenced by my currently being subpoenaed in a federal class action lawsuit between Zoom and Zoom's investors. So, you know, I mean, like, yeah, there are many in this space that will love the term hacker, and there are many that will use the term security researcher, and there are many in this space that will use the term bug bounty hunter because they're in it only for the money.
Jonathan, one day I'll put you through my legalese 101.
I don't necessarily think that the term finder is something that's I don't think the term finder is a great search engine optimization term for any sort of language or guides around the topic of security research.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, you're gonna show me the Google Trends?
I'm gonna show you the paper I helped write.
Oh, okay.
Whatever happens after this point, I don't care. I won.
Yes, you did. I give it to you. Oh my goodness.
I can't find it off the top of my head. That was firsts.
Here, I got you. Ready? I mean, how about how's this? Security researcher, vulnerability finder. Of course, it's only coming out of North Carolina. So
Wait,
It's a rabbit hole.
So what that says is Finder is nowhere?
I don't know what finder what's the actual term?
The term that the form of incident response and security teams uses is finder.
I mean, Finder's got a lot of coverage, but it's also probably not relevant to read security.
Exactly.
All right.
It has nothing to do with.
Enough of that nonsense. We can, so right now we're working on a list of personas that we might want to focus and develop some user journeys for, some diagrams to help those communities interact with the
Security
foundation.
researcher and budding security researcher.
Jay.
Security researcher wannabe. Like, honestly, here's the funny thing about this space.
Wait, Jonathan, before you continue, I just want to say I rest my case.
I want to be completely honest to you all here. The amount of effort that it takes to actually find a security vulnerability anywhere in this industry is actually way lower than I thought it was. Like, vulnerabilities are a dime a dozen, and you just need to start sneezing and you'll find them. I thought that you needed proper training, proper education. I thought you needed to take classes. As a software engineer, you mostly have the knowledge you need to find security vulnerabilities. Mostly, maybe a little bit of extra thinking about how to exploit a system, but like it's really not that far off. So like, yeah, and I get the term that maybe Finder is like, well, you're not a security researcher, you just accidentally found the vulnerability. Yeah, but
A large portion of vulnerabilities are found by the users of the software. They come across a problem, they don't know what it is, and they report it, and it turns out to be a vuln.
yeah, I buy that. Then you get to call them a security researcher, and how much prouder will that make them? Coat of arms behind Jay. He's holding his throne.
Victory.
Jay, how much did you pay him to come and make your case here?
Hey, look,
He just keeps going and then going now. It's like, come on, you can't stop
to
him.
do with any of this. Hell, I could have put money on him taking 5 to 10 minutes on the back end too. I could have did that as well. I took the over easily. I told you. Jonathan, so let me explain to you what occurred. Before you got here, Crow put out Finder. I said, look, I can tell you right now, we know of one person who I definitively know is going to have a problem with Finder. Definitively. He calls himself a security researcher. He's never going to call himself a Finder. He's going to have us think about it. It's Jonathan. And here you go, you magically appear. Not only did you say no, but you went on a diatribe about it.
So actually, on my job description, or on the title that I was given originally, it was security researcher, security analyst on the title. And I'm like, security analyst is not a, it seems like a freaking, unsexy sort of like, so I said, can you please make it security researcher? Also, can you slap senior on the beginning of that when you're, and they're like, yeah, here's your updated, like, thank you. And so, just asking for what I wanted my title to be when I joined was yeah. I'm proud of my title as being a security researcher. I thought that it's been a space that I've always like kind of looked in on and been like, ooh, that'd be cool to be that someday. And I feel like I've ended up there, even though I feel like, we've all got our own brand of imposter syndrome, and I still have mine. So, yep.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Jay can't have enough about the bragging about this. We are going to keep hearing about that one.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So can we think of any persona? We don't have to have the definitive list today, But can we think of any other personas that we may want to try to include in doing a more detailed journey and then mapping to projects, SIGs, working groups?
Anarchists.
That may not be a persona that we desire to address as part of our foundation activities.
Yeah, I
Although
was
it
going to say it
maybe
may
one we do.
exist, but
A little bit of fire is not a bad thing every once in a while. Keeps the forests fresh.
I will,
yes, so
after I write my email to ops to get the meeting name changed in the calendar, I will send an email to this mailing list soliciting additional thoughts around the personas that we may want to invest more time in kind of mapping out how things line up and serve those communities. And I think that'll also help with the Sterling nonsense that we probably have some gaps. Like this persona needs this support, and we may not have something to help them. So that might also be good feedback for that group if we identify any gaps.
just to just to preempt the kind of suggestion we just got, I think it's useful to qualify this a persona we're interested to address.
Details.
Not just any persona out there.
Yeah, I don't want Windows users. I don't want to talk to Windows users.
Yeah, I've got a mentee. That's
Sorry,
a-
Jay.
Hurt, the hurt and pain, and that comment, jeez.
Hey, I'm still stung by Balmer and his stupid red jelly beans.
Oh, God. Well, you will know that when I'm security researching, I'm using a Linux box. Me and Cali Linux, you know that it's too powerful.
Huzzah. All right. So we have a petitioner here today joining us, interested in having us review a diagram, I see. Would you like to share your screen, Jonathan?
Yeah, hang on. I gotta find where's my other.
Since
Oh.
my laptop's not ready to catch on fire.
Yeah. I got two. I took one and turned it into a state diagram. Shiny. Okay. Copy link address, open it in the right tab because this is the one that's actually logged into my Linux Foundation account. Screen share. Okay. So something that I learned yesterday or relearned yesterday is that you can embed mermaid charts in README markdown files and they render properly. Did y'all know that? So this, as an example, this is native to GitHub. You can, here if I zoom in, you can actually like zoom in on this thing and it's like a live, it's live rendered from the code that's in the markdown. So
Neat.
And I go to the raw.
Wheeler had played with that with a couple of our early diagrams.
Yeah, this one. This is the code behind that state diagram. Anywho, I thought that was kind of fun. I figured that state diagrams should live with the code, so I wrote that in Mermaid because it was more relevant. Anyways, so this is a state diagram version of this flow graph. So this flow graph describes or proposes a flow for automated vulnerability disclosure across open source. It may use elements of flowcharts and UML diagrams in this, or yeah, is it flowcharts and state diagrams a little bit merged together because it's only fun if you mix up your diagramming stuff. How I know that Crowe's seen this before. Has anybody else here seen this and need a rundown? Or does anybody?
You may want to zoom in a little bit because I'm not the only old person that has problems seeing.
Send the link to this too, so that people can also look on their own monitors too.
Let me get my trifocal on that.
No. So the idea is you have a vulnerability and you ask the repository like host or like GitHub, Bitbucket, all this like is there a support? So PMPVR, let me just start down here. The key would be a good starting point. PMPVR, which is a programmatic means of private vulnerability reporting, which for GitHub is PVR, for GitLab is private pull requests. Start, terminate, or decisions. Fork joins are places where we have two concurrent threads breaking off. ORs are where things come together. Delays. Okay, so that's that. So start here. Repository host supports PMPVR. If yes, if the repository has PMPVR enabled, then we go down to these two flows where we fork off into these two different branches. Otherwise, if the host doesn't support PMPVR, then we just don't go down this route. If they do support PMPVR, then we just jump immediately to creating a public pull or private pull request via PMPVR, and then we're done. I know there's no end note on that, but it links to another document. Otherwise, we run this loop continuously where we check to see, is the vulnerability fixed? If not, has 90 days elapsed since the process began? If not, has the public pull request been opened? If no, is the repository had PMPVR enabled? We just iterate over this continuously, and if we have PMPVR enabled, we go to the yes case. If it's been at least 90 days, we go down here and we create a public pull request. Otherwise, we're going through this flow over here. This flow happens concurrently with that loop over there. So we try to find the vulnerability, the emails to report the vulnerability to via an OpenSSF project called Disclose Check, which Michael Scovetta wrote. And then we check to see if the repository has issues enabled and the repository host supports PMPVR. If true, we go up here, and if we find emails, then we go and branch and do two parallel flows here. Otherwise, if we have repository issues enabled but no emails, we go down this route. If we have no PMPVR or issues are not enabled, then we just go the email route. If we have no issues enabled, no PMPVR, and no emails, we just create a public pull request. Otherwise, we zoom out a hair. That's more than a hair. We go into these two flows. The top one is focused on issue-based disclosure, where we either open an existing, we use an existing issue, or we use an existing issue, or we create a new issue. And then for this flow, if the issue is closed or deleted without a response, then we are finished. Otherwise, we wait at least 35 days for the issue to be open before completing the issue phase, which is basically asking the maintainer, please enable PMPVR. Simultaneously, we're doing this email-based flow where we send emails out to request PMPVR, attach a patch file and the vulnerability details. If all the emails bounce, then this is completed. If not, you have an option of either waiting 90 days or waiting for a response that is not a vulnerability, or the proposed fix is invalid, or at least 90 days has occurred since the email was sent. And those three complete this flow as well. And then at the end of the waiting for email and for the issue, at that point, we check again to see if PMPVR is enabled. If it's not still at that point, we open a public pull request. Otherwise, we end. Yeah, that's the flow.
What if the developer disagrees that what you found is not a vulnerability?
If they say it's not a vulnerability, we just create a public pull request because it's not a vulnerability. They won't mind it being public at that point. Then, if they say the proposed fix is invalid because the code that we've given them is not right, then it just doesn't happen. I don't have that probably means that your code that you're generating is wrong, and you should go back to the drawing board and consider trying to fix it for that case. Yeah, there's one thing that's not handled in here that I should just throw in here. There's a case of like, what if you get to the start and the repository is archived? And if the repository is archived, then you jump to end immediately. And that may involve disclosing via an alternative channel that's not this, like creating a public thing.
What if the developer doesn't understand and needs more help and more time?
This is intended to be automated. If the maintainer needs more time, this conforms to the 90-day disclosure policy for the Open Source Security Foundation. They get a little bit more of a, I mean, currently it's not really defined if we disclose via PMPVR, if they get like an additional time at that point, right? Like, they're like, okay, like let's say that they take, 30 days to get PMPVR enabled. Do we then give them 90 days here in this phase, or does the original 30-day disclosure window continue to apply from this point forward? And I think that's a problem because that generally is a problem from like determining when the start is, because like, what if we don't find an email, but we are able to open an issue, right? Like that could be nebulous and kind of difficult. I'm inclined to just keep it simple and try to like handle this with a 90-day disclosure window as soon as this is enabled. But I am happy to hear dissenting opinions on that one.
You'll want to clearly define the PM PVR somewhere in the diagram for.
It's going to be defined in the
users.
document, but what it stands for is defined over here in the key. The document that is associated with this has a much clearer definition of what it means, and an example being GitHub's private vulnerability reporting.
Great. Yeah, just because not every developer is hip to all the acronyms or latest things. So make sure it's clearly laid out.
GitHub calls it PVR, but I didn't want to have it be GitHub centric. I mean, I know we're using issues as a term as it is, so and other people use tickets and all that stuff, but I was just like, let's make it programmatic means of. Yeah. Also, PVR is just private vulnerability reporting. Programmatic means is the API sort of way, And then from there, I know we have 1 minute. I took this entire thing and turned it into a state diagram to try to. I'm going to try to write code against this.
And I do need to drop for my real job. I have to record a podcast, so I need to reboot because my computer's about ready to explode.
Yeah.
But please feel free to continue. Yeah, I think it's good work. If you folks have feedback for Jonathan, please share it with him. And I would also send this to our mailing list, Jonathan, just because there's a couple folks that participate but aren't here today.
The Diagrammer Society one.
Yes, please.
Okay, both of them. Yeah, I can do that.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Yeah, need to go. Bye, guys.
And then there were 2. And then there was 1.